Welcome, Mr. Holmes. You have just woken up into the program, ever present. Hope you find it wonderful because your brain will be asleep and your imagination will be limitless. At this time, you can create what you want, feel what you want, and be who you want. There are no boundaries, there are no rules. As long as you remain calm and at peace, you will become Or-Ma'a. Enjoy, Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, I made this beat like 2 weeks ago.
Let me put my mind at ease.
Okay.
Like the waves in the West Indies.
Yeah.
Cut the day, let me rest in peace.
Alright.
Take the pain away, no one stressing me. Yeah, let me put my mind at ease.
Okay.
Let me put my mind at ease. Let me put my mind at ease. Yeah, let me put my mind at ease. Let me drift off for a second. Getting all lost in the message. Words of a weapon. I ain't got time for the checking. Lines about the truth. Who you think you vetting? Really got time for the beef. Only got time for my rhymes and time for my beats. No lie, I'm a fly. I'm a prize to the wise. You can find on my eyes when the tides on the rise. Hood gentrified and the blacks on the sides and the whites with the sides of my life just a prize. My life in my hands. My mind is my man. Dubbing these haters, that's all in the plan. No crack in the pot, but it's greens in the pan. I'm just trying to put some fans in the stands. Yeah. Fans in the stands. Let me put my mind at ease. Like the waves in the West Indies. Cut the day, let me rest in peace. Take the pain away, no one stressing me. Yeah, let me put my mind at ease. Let me put my mind at ease. Let me put my mind at ease. Yeah, let me put my mind at ease.
Straight like that. And we still going. Hey, 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 hey. Dude, this beat's really nice. Got a nice feel to it. Yeah, yeah.
You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation, the place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You are now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Herut, and I got my good brother over here, Brother Ra. How you doing?
Oh, brother, doing quite well in yourself. Just enjoying the season of change, brother. That's about it.
Indeed, man. Me as well, man. We coming, out of this whole solstice period, man, and I feeling a new energy, man. Feeling some, some different things going on or whatnot, man. So, I'm all for it right now, man. Everything's all good,
Indeed.
you know. Indeed. But as always, like to remind you all to like and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you share this if you're watching on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, and if you're listening on the streaming platforms, if you're on Spotify, iHeart, or iTunes, or Apple, and all these different platforms. Make sure you're subscribed. Your subscription matters. Or whatnot when it comes down to the analytics and all the different algorithms and stuff like that. So make sure you're doing that, and hit that notification bell as well. You know what I'm saying? Because whenever we're dropping content, dropping different things and stuff like that, you get that. So make sure that you do that. And as usual, this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Perusha Astrology. And our good people over there on Patreon. Big shout out to y'all. Or whatnot, man. Shout out to the patrons, man. They definitely be holding it down, man. Patreon's an interesting platform, man. We'll maybe we'll talk about that another time or whatnot. But yeah, man, big shout out to our patrons out there. And you can find Push It Forward Media Group and the Cosmic Convos Instagram page at COSMICCONVO. That's on Instagram. You can find Push It Forward at Push It Forward PUSHITFWD. That's on Instagram as well, and in both locations you can get a link to the website. You can get a link to the all the different platforms that we're on. Whatever is comfortable for you. We pretty much are on every major platform out there or whatnot. So definitely hit us up there. Brother Ra, how can the people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me via Facebook or IG via Shechem Ra, or you can hit me up on Astrology at gmail.com as well.
Indeed. And definitely hit up Brother Ra, man. You know what I'm saying, man? Hit up Ra, man, and get that that consultation jumping or whatnot, man.
And classes are coming up too, so classes will be starting. Another first level class will start January the 24th. So definitely let me know if you're interested via one of those uh, means of communication, and we'll get you tightened up and get you enrolled.
Indeed. And man, last week I mentioned Clubhouse and stuff like that. So if you're on Clubhouse and you're checking us out, man, follow me or whatnot. I'm Herut, HERUT on Clubhouse. And typically on Saturday morning, man, I might open up a room or something like that, man. We they're only on one particular platform right now, iPhone and stuff like that. But we got another way, so we gonna bring Ra in the building as well, man. Let the people hear from Ra out there, man, because Clubhouse is an interesting place, man. You'll you'll learn to find. But I think it's a lot of good networking and stuff like that goes on, man. So we definitely gonna hook that up or whatnot. So yeah, be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. Follow me, and then be looking out Saturday mornings around like 9 a.m. We'll open up a room up there and do it like that. All right. But moving on, we're here at episode 14 or whatnot of season 3 of this podcast. This is we're making strides, man. We're just plodding along slowly but surely, man, just building up the episodes, building up the content, building up the audience. So we definitely appreciate you all sticking with us through all the different changes and different things like that, so we definitely appreciate that. We got a lot of good feedback on the last episode, man. Like, what about you? What you been hearing?
I've been hearing good things too. Definitely, it was a liked episode. Our episodes, they have a lot of range. So we kind of cover as much as we can from an astrological purview. So, I enjoyed going back and listening to it as well. So it was quite a good show.
Indeed, indeed, man. I this past week I kind of went back to season one a little bit. I know we at the end of season one we did something real interesting. We had dropped those three episodes all in the same day or whatnot, man. And I went back and listened to those, man. Just because I know, we predicted a lot of different things in 2020, but I just couldn't always remember all the specifics and everything that was said because it was we've done so many episodes since then. So I went back and listened to it. It was like, yeah, man. So I definitely encourage everybody go back in the catalog, especially new listeners and stuff like that. Definitely go back in the catalog and check out some of these older episodes, man. I'm telling you, they are, just as good as this one. We're sounding better now, and we got, the video and all that stuff like that now, man. But all those episodes are fire, man, for sure.
Yeah,
Indeed,
they are.
man.
They're very good.
Indeed, indeed. So, I got one question from Patreon. We could get into or whatnot.
Hmm.
And it's relevant to the show today, sort of in a more general sense. But the brother wanted to know when do we see the United States going through another Great Depression like situation in the future or current or whenever?
Well, um, you know, the Great Depression happened in the early 1900s, 1914, I want to say 1914, 1920s, between there. And at that time, the world was a different place. Um, we were very isolated as far as, in fact, I mean, considering oil was just a major uh, new discovery as far as commodities are concerned, right? Oil was, I mean, it's been around since the 1800s, late 1800s, but the 1900s is basically when oil began to be needed, but it was just brand new. And so a lot of the industries, steel industries, those industries were just burgeoning. They were just starting. The whole economic structure of America was literally being renovated and rebuilt. So that's this transformation from a pre-industrial to a post-industrial era. At that flux is a major point when the economy has to literally readjust, right? And so that's a lot of what the Great Depression was about. Of course, a lot of it was engineered, and we won't get into that conversation. But uh, but nonetheless, it happens. And so at that time, the American economy and the world at large was not integrated, right, as it is as it is wasn't as integrated as it is today, right? All of these market shares really, in fact, the dollar is still kind of held as the kind of um, slide rule that people measure their economic growth against. So that being the case, it's just a very different world with regards to the internet, technology, travel, right? Think about it in 1900s. How often did people get on a plane to go across, right, to another side of the world, right, within a matter of hours? That was unheard of, right? So you're talking about completely night and day economies in a different world, and so you won't really see the harsh. You're going to see it. Let me say this: you will see challenges economically speaking that will literally devastate the economy. But to have a Great Depression, meaning that there's no food resources, there's no um, the ability to travel, all those things are shut down. It's just very hard for a global economy to suffer that when America is such a linchpin in how everything moves. And so you won't see that. What you'll see is um, an increase. You will see an increase of homelessness. And we're going to talk about that. In fact, that's a great question to segue into today's topic. But economically speaking, it's just not the conditions just don't present themselves to have what we consider a Great Depression. We'll have great recessions, which will extend over a period of time, and we'll rebound and go back and forth. But I want you to think about something for just a split second. If the value of gold is going to be literally almost 4 to 5 times worth its initial value now in 3 to 5 years, that tells you a great deal about the economy, because that means that literally precious metal is going to be literally more valuable, right? The dollar itself is going to fall, continue to fall, and continue to fall. Gold, the only way gold can sustain itself like that is when currencies literally have problems. And so you're going to see, of course, the value of the dollar is already smaller and to nil now anyway. I mean, you can't get anything for a dollar, right? So you got to consider, right, where we are and what the worst case scenario is. We will see homelessness, we will see hunger, we will see um, um, complete loss of homes, right? Those types of things. But to have a great depression where it's just nothing, nobody's working. I mean, if we've survived COVID, right, it's kind of hard to surmise something that would literally undermine the economy worse than COVID, because COVID has put a stop on everything.
Yeah.
So, just measuring, right, and kind of using both kind of time frames, looking at now and looking at then. Yeah, we're gonna have some rough times, but I wouldn't consider it to be to the point where um, we are asunder, where we can't um, have some functionality as far as the economy is concerned. I just don't see that happening. But stranger things have been said, stranger things have happened. So, who knows? But from what I can see, I don't see that as being something that would plague the U.S. In any real serious form.
Yeah, I think if something like that were to happen, we're looking at, this is a total different scenario that we're looking at. United States will not be the United States as we know it today if something like that was to happen. Not even close.
Right.
I mean, we're something got brought to the soil. Something significant is on this landmass and causing havoc, and worse than a bio threat. We're talking about
Yeah, it had to be
some type
something
of
on a mass
yeah.
extinction. I mean, you know, COVID is a great test, right?
Hmm.
It's a great test of the economy, a great test of your financial wherewithal, your ability, of course, your health, right? All these things are tested. And so when you see the economy still, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, right? I assure you. But just to kind of flat out answer your question, from what I can see and how the world works right now, I could be wrong, but a Great Depression would probably be something that we just don't get a chance to really view in its full entirety. Maybe portions of it, maybe pockets of it, maybe different areas, different things in different areas that might be affected in a similar way. But to have a composite whole, the whole country, nothing's moving. No, I, I, I don't see that at all.
Yeah, I was going to mention something else, but you know what? I'm gonna save that for a show. We can hit that on the show. I think you know what I was about to where I was about to go with that, but
I think so.
we'll talk about it or whatnot. But with that being said, man, hopefully that satisfied you with that question or whatnot, and also we would have to really yeah, well yeah yeah that we'll do a show on that. I'll mention it to you offline or whatnot, but yeah, man. So let's man, we ain't got no more questions. Let's go ahead and get into it. They already be giving us a hard time, man. Like,
All right.
like get to the topic. So, let's go ahead and jump in. It's a lot of stuff going on. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen a lot of different things. Of course, this is prime time. A lot of astrologers giving their predictions and a bunch of different systems, and talking about the events that's unfolding. A lot of those events we mentioned before. I got a message from somebody on Instagram was like, dude, man, everything y'all been saying over the past seasons that's been happening like on clock. So, you know, let's peer into the future a little bit again, or in the current, and just kind of see where we're at. This is a new season, new year. According to American standards and stuff like that, and we got a lot of big things, a lot of changes going on, or whatnot. So,
Definitely.
yeah, so let's get into it.
Let's do it. So, uh, first things first, right? A lot of people have been asking about the recent U.S. Capitol ransack, and so you know, um, a lot of things are tied into all of this, including Trump's chart, including America's chart, and they kind of intermesh and they intermingle to a point where the ruler almost anything that he does affects America immediately, right? The horoscope of a leader is crucial to understand in regards to how things unfold. And remember, I told you, remember, this man would be under duress, right? When this whole transit would move through, right? That fourth house for him, right? Of course, it's
Yeah,
over now, right? K2 is still tenanting and moving through. Yeah, K2 is still tenanting and moving through, right? But it's a different day, right? Because there's some oppositions that he's had that have unfolded, and all these things. Like I said, that Saturn in opposition would literally push, right, and I mean literally it squeezes, right, him into a position where he feels like he's has nowhere to move. And when you trap a rat, right, that's the worst time to try to touch him.
I've had a rat hiss
So
at me before. Backed up. I had a hiss at me.
yeah, so he feels cornered in, right?
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I'm not saying rightfully so, but law of Hirkohuti says, there's cause and effect. Right? You reap what you sow. So, you know, that January 6th event, right, was really triggered by Mars coming into proximity.
No, no, no. We're good.
So
Yeah.
it's triggered by Mars coming into proximity to Uranus. That's the main caveat in this. That's the main um, instigator, right, in this whole kind of thing, because Mars is beginning to make its way towards Uranus, right? And Uranus, as we already know, is a planet we don't use in natal astrology, but we do use it in mundane astrology because it gives a very keen and all around understanding about how the world is being affected, countries, corporations, large uh, things that exist over great deals or periods of time. So as Mars begins to approach, right, it's going to increase, and it's increasing now. Right? So that unrest, right? Mars was in Mr. Trump's ninth house, right? And Mars being, or it still is, in the being in the ninth house, right? It gives him more of a kind of a self-righteous kind of fight for your truth kind of stance, right? And so, when you understand that Mars literally being in the ninth house, right, it's causing that individual to have to fight for their beliefs, right? To fight for what they think is right, to fight for justice, to fight for truth. And so that's what that whole speech was about. But what you don't know is that Mars is in the 12th house of the United States of America simultaneously. And the 12th house of any country creates a dissolution, right, or a dissolving of that particular nation's standings or nation's kind of overall face. And so the United States, right, has been the laughing stock, right, of the democratic world for the last month and a half. And so a lot of times when you have Mars transiting the 12th, even though, excuse me, Mars transiting the fifth,
Fifth.
right, of the nation, right, which is the 12th Lord as well. The 12th Lord rules, right, any type of espionage, hidden enemies, right? Foreign invaders, right? Or any type of foreign adversary, right? Can also be viewed from 12th house. And so when you begin to understand that particular ruler is in the fifth in Aries, right? The fifth house would understand it is kind of like the overall nation's ability to and well, let's look at it from this perspective before we say that the fifth house is the eighth house from the 10th house, meaning that the ruler, right, it can be undone or fall from power. And I mentioned this previously, right? But when that Mars is in the fifth house, as you can see, and it's you see Uranus right there next to it, the ruler itself, right? The ruler of the country, the ruler of the nation, is literally being the power that he possesses or she possesses is being undermined, right? So that's what the fifth house can do or it does when Mars is transiting right through that particular point in that particular area. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that as Mars continues to approach Uranus, as it gets closer and closer, that particular 12th Lord, right? That's why when we understand a chart, you have to understand the rulers of a house. Rulers of a house tell a great deal about what's going to happen. But the ruler of the 12th is in the fifth, right? So when you understand that the ruler of the 12th literally is that which takes away or that which undermines you or that which can cause you to lose your sensibilities, right? That particular ruler, right, is going to continue to make its approach until finally on the day of inauguration, it's going to be conjunct Moon and it's going to be conjunct Aries. I'm excuse me, it's going to be conjunct Uranus by degree. So on the 19th and the 20th, those two dates, those are crucial dates that you want to you want to just make sure that you're not in the kind of limelight when these things kind of go on as far as like being in public places, being in areas where like the government, like capitals, things like that. Just stay away from downtown. Stay away from those areas, right? Because those things have been kind of areas been recognized where there's going to be some civil unrest. And the other thing to keep in mind is that right now, as we stand, right, if you take a look at the chart, and this is for, in fact,
Let
what date
me
is this
move it
for?
back to the circular so you can see it. It's coming. This is for the 19th.
Okay, all right. So if you take a look at the 19th, right, we're in a call Sarpa Yoga, and so just to kind of divert quickly and come back, a call Sarpa Yoga is when all the planets are in between Rahu and Ketu.
And for all those who are listening, just so in in this chart, we're looking at look at the outer ring. That's the transit. The inner ring is the actual, chart of the United States or whatever chart we're looking at. But the outer ring is telling you the transit. So that Carl Sarper, you see how you have Rahu sitting here, then you have K2 sitting here, and there's no planets right here. All the planets are bundled inside of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's akin to the planets, right? All of our forces, all of our kind of abilities and whatnot being kind of subsumed into the belly of the beast or the belly of the serpent, belly of the dragon, right? And so there's a lot of tumultuousness and turning and twisting and rearranging during a call Sarp yoga. So, it's called the serpent of time, and time twists things, right? It squeezes things until it pops, right? Until something either ascends or descends, and or both, right? And so this called Serp Yoga happens, right? It's happening all simultaneously throughout this whole inauguration process. So as remember I told you previously, like this is in fact, I don't think they'll get to the point of impeaching him. I think they're very limited on time. But I said before that he actually was impeached previously. He'll be the only president if they do to have two impeachments. But from what I see, I think he'll get just right out of the woods based on his own natal chart as far as the whole uh, um, process is concerned. They have to have a time frame before they can really stick it to him, unless they do some drastic things between now and then. And with Mars lining up with Uranus, it's kind of fair game. It could still possibly happen, but based on his chart and based on what I see, I don't think he just fizzle out and go on about his way. But let's
They
take
were
a look at
smart.
the
They
chart.
let him do that.
Yeah, I think that at this point, the way the tension of the nation is, it just would be better to just let the man go, right? Because let's take a look at what happens on inauguration day. So as you can see, as uh, Harut said, that the outer circle contains the planets as they transit. So if you look on the 20th, Venus is in the ascendant of America, right? It's in the first house of the United States chart. So that means that literally, and people say you would think that Venus is a planet that deals with beauty and pleasure and cooperation and things of that nature. Well, not for Sagittarius ascendant, right? Each ascendant has a very different relationship with the planets, so that not every planet produces the same result for everything, for everyone or everything. So
Yeah.
Venus, being in the ascendant, rules the sixth house of enemies, but it also rules the 11th house of friends. And what does that mean? It means that on that day, right, the people will be at odds with one another. There will be a
Yeah.
split or a contention between those that consider the incumbent party as a friend and also those that consider the incumbent party as an enemy.
Yeah.
So Venus moving that through that particular point at that particular time doesn't bode well. That day, it's probably wise to just stay out of the way, because they've already purported, right, that the National Guard has already arrived in Washington, D.C. ahead of the inauguration. They're purporting that a lot of these, I guess, extreme, quote unquote, extreme militias are lining up in major cities such as Minneapolis, Chicago, um, New York, different areas. So it's just showing that this particular time, at this, especially this date, shows a lot of animosity, right, and a lot of tension in this nation. Now, if you'll notice, Venus is in opposition to the sun within 2 degrees on that. Well, the natal sun in 2 degrees, within 2 degrees on that day. So, meaning Venus in the ascendant of America opposes the natal sun of America on that day, right? And that's within about a 2 degrees orb, which is still fairly significant because the sun stands for what? For government, right? So again, the people, right, are going to be split, or they're going to be dualized. Some will be friends, some will be enemies, right? And the sun, or the leader, right, which is what the sun represents, or the president and his cabinet or whomever is with him, will feel that animosity. They're going to have to address that in some form or fashion, because not only that, Venus is going to oppose all four planets in that house within that time, within this, in fact, within the last 30 days. Venus has made the opposition to all those planets. That's why you're feeling the opposition. That's why America has such a big issue as far as the people are concerned, because that Venus is the sixth and 11th lord. That is one of the worst planets for a Sagittarius ascendants. So that means that Venus is lighting up. Not only is it lit up Mars, right, as it transit, and it made it transit in there right around the 3rd of January. So just recently, it would have hit Mars. It opposes Venus, right? It opposes Jupiter, and it opposes Sun. All those planets have to be opposed by that transiting Venus during this time. Venus doesn't even leave until January 27th, well after the inauguration. So that planet is going to cause havoc. That planet is going to literally leave a lot of frustration in the mouths of people after that inauguration. Now, the other thing that we want to keep in mind is about this call SARP yoga. What does it mean? how does it affect people, or how does it affect this nation? Because it's going to affect everything, the world. But we live in the United States, so we kind of have to pay attention to the pulse of the nation. And so Rahu is in the second house. I'm excuse me, Rahu's in the sixth house. K2 is in the eighth, the 12th house. So that sixth, 12th house axis is a big axis. Isn't it strange that the axis involves public health, vaccinations? That's what the sixth house deals with. Guidelines for dealing with disease, right? Food supplies, the working class, right? Employment, leasing and tenants, fighting and contention, and just overall general services to the people. Well, all of those things, right, they're trying to, things are trying to stabilize in that particular area of the nation, right? In fact, Rahu entering there, right, is that, when you receive those stimuluses, right, that's what Rahu does in the sixth house in Taurus. That's trying to stabilize, right, the economy. The sixth house is a Artha house, is a house that deals with physical resources and wealth, right? So literally, right, that stabilization is what you're seeing. That's the stimulus that you're receiving. That's where you can see it in the nation's chart. It's Rahu in the sixth in Taurus. Now, in addition to that, right, you have the 12th house, which deals with hospitals, right, charity, donations, espionage, right, the disintegration, right, of the overall status quo of the nation, right? Epidemics, things that are, literally that can take the country on a different trajectory and not in a good way. So the sixth and the 12th house is this axis that the Kal Sarpa is dealing, right? And that whole axis is what we're seeing in regards to how the nation is dealing. I mean, it's not as just us, it's the world at large as well. And here's how we know as well. K2 Rahu deals with um, viruses, right? Unseen, hidden things that affect man, right? Ghosts, ghouls, goblins, but also diseases, right? That are virulent or microscopic.
Yeah.
Well, antidote, and what we must understand is that Rahu is akin to smoke, right? In what we can in Vedic astrology and Jyotish, right? Rahu is smoke, fog, right? Well, Ketu is that which inhales the smoke, right? Or removes, right, the ambiguity or the fog. So Ketu deals with scientists, right? It's in the sign of Scorpio, and Scorpio is the sign of what? Research, right? Digging into things that are unseen and then hidden, dealing with transformative situations, right? So this whole Rahu Ketu in the axis of Scorpio and Taurus, right, deals with this whole process of trying to stabilize America through trying to get some type of vaccination going, right? But here's the caveat. If you've paid attention, remember I told you that this thing is going to mutate. It did already twice,
Yeah.
right? It's going to mutate. It's mutated again the third time. They just didn't tell you. There's a new strain found in South Africa, right? Another strain, not the one that was in, not the second one that was in UK and then came to Colorado and then went to California and so forth, right? And
They
it
they
didn't go
already
anywhere. In fact, they didn't even find any travel connections. Just
they
sprang up.
already they already throwing around the word. I've seen it. COVID-21. I've seen it around.
Right, right, right. Right. So this whole new strain, right? They're saying that the virus could potentially outsmart, but um, out configure, right, the vaccine, because the vaccine works on a code and it fits within, right. It fits like a hand in glove with regards to the actual virus, so it can affect the virus and do what it has to do. So that the spikes on the virus, right, change, right? And so now they're talking about the spikes on the virus have changed again. And so now it's even more contagious. So and this is you can look this up on NBC, and this is they talk about Dr. Fauci, right? I have no particular. People can say he's evil, good. I have no sway either way, right? I'm not here to pass on any judgment about that man. I don't know anything about him,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, he's claiming that the South African strain is probably going to have an issue with the vaccinations. So if that happens, guess what? That means you're reinfected because now the actual virus has metamorphosized to something else where you can't use what you already have taken in your body, so you have to take another vaccine, right? It's getting to be quite a mess. And this called SARP yoga, especially within the United States of America, is affecting many things such as unemployment, right? It's affecting housing, right? It's affecting education, right? A lot of the things that the sixth house deal with. I mean, in fact, the public health workers, right, which is the sixth house, are being affected, right? And of course, the passing through there is trying to stabilize, is trying to kind of come into under some control. But here's the thing, right? These Rahu has to pass through, right, certain aspects of this particular sign in order to stabilize. It won't stabilize until it gets into Kritika. And people say it can stabilize and when it gets into Rohini. I don't think so. I think it's gonna level off and it'll have another spike and then it'll level off again and dip when it gets into Kritika because Kritika is ruled by the sun and Rahu is enemy to the sun, meaning that the sun obliterates any type of cloud or confusion that Rahu can bring. That's my
Yeah.
prediction. So because the moon, right, is also enemy to Rahu, but the moon has little power to assuage or to dispel any type of mental or um, aberrant confusion. Right, the mind is a reflective process, which is what Rohini is ruled by. This is as Rahu moves backward through Taurus. When Rahu gets to Kritika, right, that is when you at 10 degrees. That is when you're going to see a drastic change, right, as far as COVID is concerned. Because at that time, I don't want to say herd immunity, and isn't it funny that we're talking herd immunity and Taurus deals in what? Herds,
Words.
right?
Yep.
Right? They move in herds, right? So I would surmise that when Rahu gets to the point of entering into Kritika, we will have a very keen awareness on how to move and how to deal with this from a commanding and from an authoritative position, which is what the sun is, which is what rules Kritika. So we're still in for a little ride here, right? Rahu is at 24 degrees, right?
23. Well, at
23 degrees.
on the 20th, it'll be at 23 degrees, 23,
Right on the
46
20th, it will
minutes.
be at 23 degrees, right?
Yeah.
It's moving backwards, right? So as it's nudging, as it comes out of Mrigashira, right? In fact, it's coming out right now, right? It's going to go into Rohini very quickly. And when it's in Rohini, then you're going to see another, and I would say shift as far as the virus is concerned, and not in a positive way. Now, the call SARP yoga is going to last until March 24th. So here's some other things to keep in mind. Remember, these planets move, but they also move against the backdrop of the actual chart we're looking at. So Mars is going to impact, right, Taurus from February 21st, no, February 21st, I'm correct, to April 13th, right? And when you see that, that is when literally things are going to get very challenging in America. Reason B is because Mars is going to leave Uranus in the sense of the heavens, meaning that where it's placed in proximity to Uranus in real time, but it's going to come into Uranus, is kind of come into contact with America's Uranus during that time. So it's going to leave the transiting Uranus and come into transit the natal Uranus, all through that process of being in Taurus. So again, right? America is going to be faced with sixth house issues. Mars is going to be there. You're going to see a split or a challenge with with the nation around who's going to take the vaccine and who's not. How do I know? Again, because Mars is in what sign? It's in Taurus. When you
Yeah.
understand how this works, Taurus is connected to the 11th house, meaning that they're connected via rulership. When that particular transit occurs, it still takes on the energy of the other house that is ruled by it, or that is co-ruled. So when Mars is in the sixth, is also affecting the 11th. So trust me, right? You're gonna see that this particular time period is when people are gonna literally they're gonna be forced to have to deal with this vaccination process. There's gonna be a cut, a split, right? Who those that will not, and those that will, right? I'm not gonna say America's gonna reward or penalize anything, but just notice, right, that it's going to become an issue, right? It's going to become because remember they're trying to they're look at the pulse of the nation. Check it out. They're trying to vaccinate 1 million a month. If I'm not correct, it might be 1 million a week, right? So if you're on that rapid trajectory and you have Mars enter into that house of public health and vaccination programs, and Mars rules the 12th house of self undoing, what do you think is going to happen? Right? Right. You're going to self undo. The country's going to self undo by fighting against vaccination programs. Not to say you should take it, not to say you shouldn't. That's not my job. Right. I'm here to present, right, what is the undergirding forces and currents that literally will cause us to have to come to this crossroad.
Oh yeah, I mean
Now,
there's already things out there in regards to like, okay, if you want to fly, if you want to do these things, there's talks of checking to see if you've taken the vaccine, or for
oh
people who
yeah.
receive certain benefits or something like that.
Think about it like this. In order to go back to work, sixth house, right? In the service field, in the medical field, in the military, right? Those things, it may come to challenge that you have to, if you work for the military, you have to take the vaccine.
They are, yeah, the military is going to be the first people that
Military,
have to do something.
right? And they say that the vaccine is 10 times more allergic reactions than the flu shot, but not to worry. So just giving you the FYI, right? So um, not only that, right? Considering that Mars doesn't break the Kalsurp Yoga until after March 24th is when Mars will break the Kalsurp Yoga, but it will be conjuncting natal Uranus, America's natal Uranus, at the exact time. So it's like it conjuncts it and then busts, and then that. And here's the thing: Mars busting out of the belly of the serpent, right? It's messy,
Yeah.
right? It's messy because Mars will then be the only handle, other than the Moon, because the Moon, of course, will make its transits. It's the fastest moving planet in the heavens, right? It's going to make its transit. So outside of the Moon, Mars will be the only one that will break the spell, break the grip of the serpent, and that's messy. It's not Venus that's smooth. It's not Saturn that's gradual. It's not the sun that's all illuminating and just
It's like
overwhelming.
cutting out
It's
the belly of the
Mars.
beast, like
Like
bust
boom,
out with the
busting it
knife.
out. Lift up knife. Yeah,
It's like-
that's messy,
sword,
right?
yeah.
So you know, this is a right brain science too. It's really more right brain than it is left brain. So when you see Mars busting out of the belly of the serpent, right, things spill out, right? Things kind of come out. You have to take into consideration the ramifications, because not only what will happen is that Mars will exit, it will exit uh, Taurus, but it's going to enter into the seventh house of America. It's going to conjunct natal Mars, natal Venus, natal Jupiter, and natal Sun all throughout, right after April 13th. Right. So if you see in April 13th, right, see it right there, boom, bust out. Right. But look at he's conjunct natal Mars right there. So that's messy, isn't it? You see that?
Yeah. Yeah. almost by degree. I mean, almost. I mean, it
by
is. I mean,
literally by degree.
yeah,
Mars is 0
zero
degrees natal.
degrees. Yeah,
Yeah, right. So Mars is going to hit Venus, which is the 6th and 11th lord. Issues, contention. Again, I'm really foreseeing that because remember, Gemini is a dualized sign now, isn't it? Right? It's a established sign or a mutable sign, which goes back and forth, or there's a split. Gemini. I'm telling you, when Mars is moving through, this is going to be right before the summer hits. And people are going to want to do what? Travel. People are going to want to have fun. People want to gonna get out. People want to gonna, and they're going
yeah.
to say, wait, vaccination. And it may not be a wait, but it's going to be an aversion. There's going to be a stronger message against it, or in for taking vaccination. You're going to see programs, right? Then when Mars gets into the 7th, then you're going to see some type of reflective action or some discord between the nation and the internal processes, meaning that Mars being in that 7th house looks back on the 1st. It's square and also aspects and looks to the 10th house as well. See, this is not this is rough right now. Mars will enter into Cancer June 1st. Right? When Mars enters into Cancer June 1st, it is debilitated. And
Yeah.
it will square, it will begin to square what we're going to deal with right now during this transit, where all those planets are in Capricorn, meaning literally almost every planet that you know of will be in Capricorn. Not on the day of inauguration, but on the 10th and the 11th, all planets will be in Capricorn.
Except
Right?
for Mars.
Hmm?
So except for Mars.
Even except for Mars, right? Yep.
But it's going to. Yeah.
All planets, almost every planet, except it will be every planet except Mars. And still that creates a square, right, or 410 axis. So when Mars gets into Cancer in June, it will create another 410 axis to what we're dealing with now. So again, and what I would anticipate is we may be in some minor skirmishes or wars at that time.
What do you think the not to take us off track too much, but that whole time period while we're in that Kyle Sarper and with Joe Biden being a Scorpio ascendant, how do you think that impacts him?
Well, the call Sarp is going to be between his 1st and 7th house.
7th house,
right?
Yeah.
And all those planets will be localized between the first and the 7th. So that's an internal process. That's one that deals with home, personal life, right? Children, right? Your ability to heal. So I would surmise that it's a message or a precursor to what I've already said previously, that this man's health conditions will probably begin to have some challenge. Remember, Mars is in his 6th house right now during the process of inauguration. Mars will be in exact opposition to that same position within almost a year. So literally, he's going to have Mars in the 12th house at the end of the year, which can present some serious health challenges. Remember, he hasn't had COVID. And there's new strains. Yes, they're taking extra precautions, but it only takes one slip.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's
they
it.
surmise that he does have Parkinson's disease. Right. So again, this is building up. This is momentum. It's excellent that you asked that, because between the 1st and the 7th house, those are things that you deal with inside of yourself, not on the public side. Right. So it's not the public that's going to have an issue. It's him. All of the think about it, all of the stress that's going to come to him, all of the things that he's got to deal with now, and not only that, to stay healthy, right, to stay functional, to be able. I mean, it's going to be stress. He's already at the level where he's not a young man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Trump is just a little younger, right? And you see, I mean, and not to say he could, I would never say anyone is doomed to any type of destruction, but let's just keep it a buck. The person, if he gets COVID, it's not going to be a pretty day, right? It's It's not. So at that particular, with that being said, right, that's what we're beginning to see is that serpent is winding up, right? And when it releases, when Mars busts out, remember it's going to be in his seventh house,
Mm-hmm.
right? So seventh house is also, it's a house of challenge, it's a house of opposition, it's a house of partners. The partner will have undue stress. So if the partner has undue stress, you have stress, or vice versa, right? It's going to be a time. And look, Saturn is in his natal seventh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that transit and this transit from February in February is going to tax him because he's going to have to literally blend two sides, and they're going to be like, and look, here's the check it out. The rioters and the people that were pro Trump and all that didn't wear any masks.
Mm-mm. No, not
So
at
I'm
all.
saying if you're taking that as kind of the picture, right, of those individuals that stand on that side, and then you have people that stand on the other side that are pro, vaccination, and then the other ones are saying, the heck with vaccination. Then you can see, I mean, there's already, right, just a split down the middle. So by the time that Saturn Mars gets into that seventh house in February, March, and part of April, it's gonna be a lot to pay, right? So the good thing that you asked that, because looking at the nation's leader, definitely, and I mean, considering Ketu is in his ascendant and Rahu, it's a big thing. That's directly connected to the nation in health
Yeah.
because the six houses within that portion of the belly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the sixth house is part of the portion where the portion ends or begins, rather, right, with the nation. They're connected, right? So considering, right, and let's just diverge for a split second, right? Right now is a very crucial time in the world, and especially in the kind of like, let's say, considered the most powerful nation in the world for now. um, Jupiter is debilitated, and it's a time that literally challenges many of us to have some type of optimistic purview of what is to come and what we can do to get through this type of challenging period. Jupiter is the planet that gives us, and I don't want to say for the average man, right? It gives us hope, right? It gives the average man the ability to say, you know what? There's a light at the end of the tunnel. That's what Jupiter does. But when he's in Capricorn, when he's debilitated, when he's at his weakest, that is when our ability to see that light at the end of the tunnel is the most faint. It's literally the time when we really have to understand that everything is temporal, everything is just temporary, and these things are just part of phases that will literally lead us into another higher level of understanding. But Jupiter, when it's debilitated, it's just hard to manage optimism, right? It's hard to manage that buoyancy, that, you know what, hey, I might have a turkey leg, right? I'm happy with that. Being happy with what you have is all about Jupiter in debilitation, right? Being happy that you have a cup to drink out of, being happy that you have a computer to view someone, being happy that you can even at least access the internet. Imagine if the internet wasn't around during COVID, you would lose your mind, right? So being happy, being thankful, having gratitude for the things that we have, and appreciating, the things that we've been given to even to sustain us through this time. The reason it's also such a big time during, as far as a test is concerned, is because Saturn's proximity to Jupiter. We just recently had what they call I guess, the so-called star of Christmas, right? Which wasn't on Christmas. It's actually December 20th. It's really the star of the solstice. But on December 21st, Saturn and Jupiter conjoined, right? When Saturn and Jupiter are in the same sign at any point, that same buoyancy, that same um, ability to kind of move beyond the small stuff and see the big picture, right? Anytime they're conjunct, it's a challenge. Well, not only are they conjunct, one's debilitated and one's in power. Saturn is in power. So that literally also adds further challenge to Jupiter's buoyancy and ability to get out of this particular little small hole that we're in. So this is a time that you literally want to literally understand how Ma'at works. Our ancestors understood that when you give selflessly, right, when you give from the heart, when you give not seeking anything in return, that is the greatest gift that you can give because it's the divine giving through you. And that is one of the things that can create a more sustainable and a more um, uh, um, fortuitous environment for us to be able to navigate until Jupiter gets out of this debilitation. He will leave debilitation slightly this year. He goes back and he's going to go forward again. So Jupiter should be leaving debilitation right around, I want to say, April 5th,
Yeah.
right? April 5th. And he's going to stay in Aquarius for a little while. Then he's going to go back into Capricorn. Now, what you're witnessing is that faith, right? Having some type of resolve coming into Aquarius because Aquarius is the sign that deals with all religions, all spiritual systems, all of man. Man is a totality. So when Jupiter gets there, it's also called a Kumbh Mela in India, where all of the gurus and the saints and the yogis and the fakirs and the goris, they all come together in one big celebration for spirituality and for their respective their religious traditions. So that is a way of saying that it's kind of like a reburgeoning of spirituality or a rebirth of the ability to garner truth, right? Well, that's going to happen, and you're going to see some of that taken back. And when it's taken back, we'll feel just the same. Hey, you know what? Geez, now we got to go back and deal with this again. And then finally, when Jupiter is out of the woods, right? When he's free flowing, and I believe that should be towards the end of the year, right? Then that literally will begin to lighten the load completely. And 2021 will then be a much more hopeful year, right? I'm 2022, excuse me, will be a much more hopeful year, a year that we do kind of gather together to come together to figure out solutions for our issues, right? Because Aquarius is the sign of different social organizations, different groups, different peoples, right? But Jupiter is a sign of seeing things from, right, a global perspective. So that may be a time we really do come up with a lot more solutions, new things, new ways to deal with old problems, right? So, it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all fate and, destiny. It's also, these are some times we definitely can plant some seeds to water so that when Jupiter comes out of that debilitation, you can use that momentum in time to start to gain some financial security back, some some resolve as far as your spiritual fortitude. It's a good time to really use this time to dig all the stuff up that you don't want to deal with for the next 12 years because Jupiter makes his rounds every 12 years. So, with that being said, um, we're not gonna go too far because I'm gonna do another touch up mid year, right? We're gonna
Yeah.
do another recap so that we can go back and look at all the things that have happened, but also look forward for the rest of the year to really get fine tuned about what to expect, right? Because as Mars begins to make his way, he's gonna end up at the end of the year in Libra, right?
Yeah.
And Mars in Libra, it only happens every 2 years. That is a foretell sign that there's going to be a lot of relationship problems, right? So if you're having issues right now in your relationships, it's a good time because towards the end of the year, right around solstice, Mars is going to literally be in the sign that is going to talk about emotional and conjugal unrest, right? So with that being said, right, we'll stop here. If Harut, if you got anything else to add or anything else you want to make mention of as far as what we can expect or what you have. awareness of.
I think we're good, man. I think we're good. We'll save the rest for the next post check we do or whatnot.
Indeed.
I think there's a good big picture, kind of current situation, stuff like that. So yeah, we'll save it to then or whatnot.
Right.
Indeed. So with that being said, this episode was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Calipusha Astrology, and our good people over there on Patreon. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon member, we got, if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, you see the ticker going across so you can get right to the website there, or you can hit us up on Instagram. If you are interested in getting consultations, anything like that, holler at Brother Ra. Brother Ra, how can the people get a hold of you again?
Yeah, just hit me up at calipurusha@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook or IG via Shekamar.
Indeed. So, without further ado, thank you all for tuning in. We will be back next week, episode 15. Same time, same place. And, you guys be safe out there. All right. So we're out. Peace.